All Hit Radio.
All right, you're listening to All Hit Radio, and it's 53 degrees. Right now on our All Request line, I've got Mike Ledgerwood on the phone. Hey, babe, what would you like to hear?
We are observing your Earth.
Listen, Mike, I'm sorry, babe, but we can't...
And we'd like to make...
I'm sorry, Mike, there's...
contact with you.
Collision Course. On Revolution Radio.
We're about to begin a journey through the cosmos. We'll encounter galaxies and suns and planets, how the cosmos has shaped our evolution. We are away from the cosmos and know its own.
Francis.
Good evening, everyone. It is Francis. It's Friday. It's Collision Course. Welcome. Tonight's show is going to be great, and I guess we're going to get right into it. I asked Suspicious Observer to come on and do a 3-minute update because he's been producing some great updates every day, and I actually share them every morning. So I'm going to get to it. Suspicious Observer, let's have the 3-minute update. You ready?
Okay, well, since Earth changes are on everyone's minds, let's start there. We had an unexpected volcano eruption in Taiwan today. It's part of a fairly active chain of volcanoes, but this one itself hasn't gone off in more than a century, and a lot more people live there now. There were a number of moderate earthquakes from the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia all the way down to Indonesia, all on the subduction zone that put Fukushima on the map. Now, the most worrisome geological zone right now is the Caribbean Plate region. It is currently under threat from no less than 5 volcanoes and has seen daily earthquake swarms in the Virgin Islands and stronger quakes in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Colombia, Peru, Guatemala, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. Now, in solar news, after no activity for most of November, this week we had a coronal mass ejection impact and are now in a strong coronal hole stream. The heart magnetometers indicate a moderate level of geomagnetic disturbance, just enough to cause some auroras at high latitudes. But the other meters indicate measurably significant penetration of solar wind through our magnetosphere. Now, don't freak out. Our ionosphere picked up the slack very well, and much of the energy that slams into our magnetic shield is harmlessly directed into the Earth via the magnetic field lines. Now, where this could be important is how these things affect the tectonic plates. You know, the iron, the copper, the other conductive metals in the ground, and even the resonances. The electromagnetic radiation is nothing more than a wave. Now, ever had thunder shake your house or feel the reverberations of a loud bass in someone's car? Same principle. This is why many think wave propagation is so dangerous. Now, of note, when the November sunspot was announced yesterday, the sun beat the predicted maximum activity for this cycle, 18 months before it will actually peak. And Mercury is going to align with the Earth and the sun this weekend, and so chances of solar flares and CMEs is going to increase. Lastly, folks, we have a web of war and systemic collapse just being woven around us. Every answer to this debt crisis is give more money, print more money. And given how the people have reacted to austerity so far, it seems that they may have painted themselves into quite the corner here. Now, as we lose ground, there is a formidable threat coalescing before our eyes in the form of China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan. Any one of them goes to war and the others have their back. Now, Iran has had 2 nuclear plants taken care of last month. By what? Who? The UK is closing their embassy there, Norway as well. Both Russia and China condemned the new sanctions on Iran. Just today, the Pentagon is reporting that the Pakistanis are refusing to take part into the probe into the friendly fire incident that killed 24 of their soldiers. True, their current intentions are beyond our knowledge, but their track record so far suggests that they have never been an ally. Oh, yeah, not to mention that anything in India, Syria, or anywhere in northern Africa, or even the Congo could spread, like the fires that tore through the United States this summer. Now, if you want to keep up with these topics, our YouTube channel is Suspicious Observers. It's all one word, and the O in Observers is replaced by a 0. Thanks for being awake. Thank you very much, Francis. Be safe, everyone.
Listen, there's some new Phobos-ground information. Phobos-ground to crash on Earth after New Year. Russian space troops. This comes from the Russian news agency Pravda. Russian space troops are watching the Phobos ground space probe. According to Oleg Ostapenko, the space troops commander said that the orbit parameters of the probe had been determined. FINAM-FM said. The orbit of the Russian defunct space probe continues to descend at the speed of 1 kilometer a day as of 7:03 a.m. MSK Tuesday. The orbit perigee of the probe made up to 209 kilometers. The orbital apogee was measured at 309. As of 11:13 p.m. Wednesday, the orbital perigee and the apogee of the probe dropped to 208 and 306, so it is coming down. Whatever contact they made with the failed space mission Phobos Grunt from Australia last week, they may have made contact, but they are not going to initiate a launch of that space probe out toward Mars. It is a lost mission. The fall of the Phobos ground station to Earth will not lead to noticeable changes in the atmosphere of the planet, according to the article. When entering the atmosphere, the probe will fall into pieces. Most of them will burn when falling. A highly toxic component of the rocket fuel will also burn during the fall, Russian scientists say. So, people will be talking more about Phobos Grunt as the New Year rolls around. They'll be tracking it again. We'll want to know where it's going to crash into Earth. If it was to land in a localized area where there's people living, it would be locally detrimental to those folks where it fall. The globe is covered mostly by water, and as most space agencies will say, they sure hope it lands in the water. The next update is going to come from the JPL and our Comet Levy, 2006 T1 Levy. Today, December 2nd, 2011, Comet Levy is 0.284 AU away from Earth. Comet Levy has a close approach on January 21st, somewhere between 5.6 million miles away from Earth it will come. Comet Levy will come a lot closer to Earth than Comet 11 ever thought about coming, practically 75% closer to Earth than Comet 11. You haven't heard a lot of talk about Comet Levy, and I've discovered the reason maybe because it is only going to become visible when it reaches its perihelion, which is reaching it pretty soon here. Over the next 10 days or so, it'll reach perihelion, and the last time a Comet Levy was photographed was just a few days, starting a few days before perihelion. And so I'll be taking the telescopes of Cosmic Obsession and pointing it out in the direction of Comet Levy when we do some of our upcoming live broadcasts on the Night Sky Network. That is one of the benefits of hopefully listening to Collision Course and enjoying some of the astronomy that the Cosmic Obsession Observatory has been doing in the past and will continue to do. Some of it is go out and use telescopes to take pictures of space. Some of it is use telescopes to look out into space at home and then broadcast to your friends live. Close approach data for Comet Levy is January 21st with Earth at 1358 UTC. The distance, minimal distance is 0.1711. And then that's basically it. It's a close approach to the Earth on January 21st. Today, Comet Levy is, according to the orbital diagram, 0.284. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the closest Comet Elenin did. I think we're real close. I think the closest Comet Elenin came was 0.234. I have to go check for sure, 0.234. So, Comet Levy is basically just as close as Comet Elenin ever got. Yet there's no great discussion about this comet, and nor are there any great images of this comet. But they will soon to be arriving, I'm sure, and I hope that I'll be able to bring some of those to you, whether it be on a live broadcast or not.
Thanks, Francis. Don't let them hang up on me, please.
Listen, it's me. I control it. You have a total of 3 minutes before I pull in Lucas. Go.
All right, cool. I appreciate that. Okay, real quick. Isn't it true that if there was a heavy mass object on the other side of the sun in relation to where the Earth is, that Mars and the other planets that are already on that side of the sun, wouldn't they be affected by this heavy mass object?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Coptic and Carol, they have no explanation for why those planets are not being affected. Is that correct?
They haven't been able to show you the object in the solar system. The day they can do that, the day the story changes.
Exactly. Now, you look through a telescope, and they don't. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly what they do, but I know the telescopes they use are better than theirs.
Exactly. Use the GRAS telescope.
Well, our own telescopes add up to about almost 1,000 millimeters in aperture. So it's right. Our telescopes here are nothing to sneeze at.
And what telescopes does Cossack and Terrell use?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
Exactly. So everything that they say is all what they use the phrase hypothesis, which basically the hypothesis on Comet Elenin was came to nothing, and now there's a new hypothesis. But you come on here and you bring facts, and as you said last week, you can point a telescope in the sky. It's very hard to find things, but to just make broad, sweeping statements about something and then say, oh, something's coming from the Leo constellation. Well, if it was, well, then it will be affecting anything that was in the direct path of that constellation, and yet it's not. So they're not looking through a telescope. You are. They just keep, Cossack apparently has been in the Ozarks for 4 months for no reason, and he has some inside information. Terrell has inside information. He's not even in the Ozarks. He's lying. He's still in Zephyros, Florida. What I have to say, Francis, because I get hung up on so many times, is why is it that you just don't, and I've said this before, just call Terrell out on the facts, get Terrell to say, show us the picture. Why can't Terrell just show us a picture of himself in the cave, or we're not going to be able to figure out.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care about you,
yeah.
Joseph.
Okay,
Joseph.
So, all right, no, not me, but okay. What do you think Terrell and Cossack's motive is? That's my question.
I stopped trying to figure out what the motive was as the moment I came to the decision that there'd be no way that would be me up there doing what they're doing. So as soon as I took myself and told myself there's no way I could do what they're doing, I don't even need a reason. I mean, I guess we're just made from two cuts of cloth. Listen, AA, I got to take on
right.
Lucas now, and I'm gonna hang up on you, but I'm not doing this intentionally.
It's okay, Francis. Thanks for taking the call, and thanks for keeping the truth alive. All right, man.
Thank you, Joseph. Everyone, this is Mr. Drumroll Wayne Young, Lucus911. Wayne, what should I say, Lucas? What's because me and you have never talked. What's best for you, my friend?
Oh, you could just call me Lucas. See, the reason I came up with Lucas, it's an acronym and a pseudonym. It stands for Living Under Constant Unstoppable Suppression. Just basically discussing the facts of putting all this stuff into a cohesive form so that people could figure it out themselves. Because people are seeking the truth, like you and I, we don't want to be told by, big fat radio hosts that pump, crap down our throat that the world, there's a bunch of people trying to kill us. We want to figure it out on ourselves.
But when you just, sometimes when you just let the information out into the public goes crazy. And in my case, it made me watch a 16-part movie 4 times. And that isn't even your best, well, to me it was the best because I was hungry for that information. And I know that there's still people hungry for the New Brave World information, and that's not even information about 188 days, nor is it your best one, which was the 9/11 information, right? That's still your number one so far, right?
Well, that was the first one I did, and I have no idea how many people have actually seen that, because when I did it, I specifically wanted it to be free forever, so I uploaded it to YouTube and to Google Video. After several attempts uploading it to YouTube, they kept deleting my accounts. I must have been through 14 different YouTube accounts, and finally somebody over in England uploaded it, and he managed to keep it on there for 4 years now, and it's now the most watched 9/11 video of all time on YouTube. It's up to 26 million views.
And that didn't bother you, because I do that even with my own shows. My shows will be recorded by someone else, and for my instance, it saves me a little time and energy, and they always do a better job recording my shows. But it seems like when somebody else takes up the torch, some of this information gets out and sticks. And I know that I've spoken to other people like yourself who say that they've tried to make information stick, and they're the ones who actually created it, and they're unable to because it appears that there seems to be people watching their activities. But I know that I danced around the first one, went to the back one. I want to get to 188 days. When is the release? Has it been released yet?
Yeah, it was released on the 22nd, 11/22. And
that's on your website, The Rabbit Hole, too?
Yes, sir.
And so anyone who wants to know more about, actually to see, a lot of times you'll have radio shows where they talk about a certain topic, and someone like Lucas has already created a movie documentary about what we're going to talk about. When they go and watch the video, it really, sinks it home, and it's a great layer of information. Now, I tell people, I present myself to my listeners as someone who is going to be on top of my game when it comes to stuff out in space. They know that I don't have a multi-year or decade history of doing that. Do you know what I mean, Lucas?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have the tools, because I don't even want to call this an opportunity. I don't find this situation that we're all in the world something that's beneficial to anybody. I don't even find it a benefit that I'm doing it, except that I found out over the last year there's not very many people like myself who are, there are a lot of astronomers out there, but honest to God, they're not willing to come into the forum and try to keep face long enough to get a point across. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I find myself to be quite unique, and I get a lot of support for that, but I also get a lot of grief for that because people just think that they don't know what I'm doing, and because I don't have multi-years of experience, I can't be smart enough to be in this discussion. I find that totally untrue. I was just like all the listeners who are there doing research and aren't speaking to others publicly like myself. I just happened to take the tools that came into my circle, used the tools, discovered something that was different than what I was being told, and in this case, because I took some pictures of Comet Olenin. I have no idea what your opinion is on that comet, but my history goes, I spent a lot of time imaging the comet because the comet was told to me to be a heavy mass object, i.e., the object that could be causing the 188-day cycle. But this was told to me back in March. And when it was told to me, I instantly found a reason to take a telescope, look out into space, and find out whether that person was right or not. And it seemed to me to be a very sensible thing at the time. And it still seems to be sensible, yet there still doesn't seem to be very many people who did it or who will actually stand up and get into the forum again. I have a question about your 188-day. Not so much about the movie, because I haven't seen the movie. I've seen both trailers, and I have a general idea where it's going. But when I walked away from it today, and I actually went to USGS because I hadn't done it before, Lucas, and I went back and I tracked a bunch of 7.0 earthquakes and higher, and I went back to 2/1809, 7.0 in the Kermatic region, and it appears that earthquakes are occurring for this segment, as you say. You have 100. I came 188, 187, 189. You're right. What does this mean to you for this segment or this statistic of earthquakes over 7.0? The smallest one in the system was at 82509 Banda. What does it mean to you? And what is it? Is it a call to action for you, or is it a call to action to explain what's going on, or an actual call to action to make you change your lifestyle?
Well, basically, what I figured out is that the earthquakes, every time Earth lines up with the object and the sun is when we have one of these earthquakes. And when we're in the springtime part of the orbit, we have the pole shifting or the axis shifting earthquakes. And basically, the reason why it's 188 days rather than 182.5 days, which is exactly half a year, is because the object is not coming directly at the center of the sun. If the object was at a 90-degree angle and coming directly at the center of the sun, Earth would line up with it every 182.5 days. but the object's in elliptical orbit with the sun. So by the time we reach that place in the orbit 6 months later, that object has already moved thousands of miles upward, so you have to add a couple extra days to the orbit. And it makes perfect sense. And so it looks as if there's something out there. And you had mentioned Comet Elenin before. Back from the beginning of when this whole Comet Elenin thing happened, I didn't say much about it. I kept my mouth shut because I didn't know. I don't have, access to NASA telescopes and sophisticated equipment like that. So what I suspect, my theory is that the comet was actually in orbit with the dense object in space, and that when it got close enough to the sun, the gravitational pull between the two, the sun and the dense object is what tore the comet to shreds. So that's what I believe happened with Comet Elenin.
So you think it's an interaction between three objects, the sun, the heavy mass object, and Elenin. The interaction between our sun, and the heavy mass object basically crumbled the comet.
Yeah, it's just a regular comet. It's just not in orbit. The comets we've dealt with up until just recently have been in orbit with our sun, like Halley's Comet, things like that. But this comet was most likely in orbit with the object coming in, whether it be a brown dwarf star or a neutron star. And we've been getting a lot of sun-diving comets lately, which are probably also comets that are in orbit with the object, and that's why they're sun-diving, because they're not in a normal orbit, so the sun's sucking them into its with its gravity.
Okay. Do you? And again, I don't know your positions on everything, and I'm just having the conversation. Do you have a guesstimation of where the object is? And the reason why I ask, and I don't want to say this in a way where you say something and then I say something different. What I want to get to is, it's my understanding, after doing a lot of research on it, and since I can't take a telescope and physically look at it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, it's my belief that it can't be in the solar system, Lucas, because of it's a heavy mass object, because it would be really messing up the outer planets. And we do have extra comets coming in and extra asteroids, or more asteroids and comets that have been observed and named, and sun divers. But are you of the opinion that the object is closer than I believe it is?
Well, it could be either one of two things, and it really depends on what the object is. Now, if it's a brown dwarf star, that means that the density of the object is not very great. It'll have a density somewhat greater than Jupiter. But if it's let's say it's a neutron star. A neutron star could be, 50 million miles away and still cause massive changes on Earth because of the fact that its density. A neutron star is the remnants of a hypernova of a gigantic star, like, say, Betelgeuse. When it goes hypernova, basically it explodes, it blows off all of its protons and electrons, and all the neutrons bind together into this tightly bound ball that's about 12 to 15 miles in diameter, but yet has the mass of 1 to 2 of our suns. In fact, the mass is so great that if you had a piece of neutron star the size of a sugar cube, it would weigh over 150 million tons. So that tells you that an object only the size of New York City could actually drag Earth around, being very, very far away. So I don't know where this object is. I do know that, there have been all these Earth changes, and it's been escalating and escalating every year. 2011, we've already broken so many records this year that we're going to break a record for most records broken in 1 year. And
Do you think 2012 is going to just... Because it appears to me, kind of, sort of, that we're in a little bit of a lull right now. A lull in the sense that, for myself in particular, I have limited, earlier in the year, the reason why I was so focused on some certain objects is because they were being called something else, and I needed to tell myself one way or the other whether it was, whether the comet in that area, because they had the timelines all worked out. The timelines still appear to be... it all appears to come down to timelines, whether it was before and that timeline didn't really pan through, but it didn't take us out of the 188-day timeline, which we're going to be coming up on, in March 21st. What I did do also, though, because I did track, I went back to 1809 with all the earthquakes over 7.0. I did, 188 days is unique in the fact that it's half an orbit basically around the sun. And if I go into the numbers of all the earthquakes over 7.0, I may find a sequence of earthquakes that are 100 days apart or 75 days apart, but they don't bring in the significance of being half an orbit around the sun and how that may affect our interaction with an unseen object out in space. But I want the listeners to know, though, that there are other sequences, other series of days that can be found in the earthquakes larger than 7.0. Would you agree with me on that or not?
Well, I haven't really found anything quite like the 188-day pattern.
No, the 188-day pattern is definitely unique, but I was able to go back, because what I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different earthquakes. I have at least 6 different earthquakes on 75-day cycles, too. So it's just, there are a lot of numbers in there to work with, but the 188 days is definitely unique because of the orbit and of the position, and quite honestly, of the severity, because I'm not going to negate the fact that the largest earthquakes occurred on the 188-day cycle.
Yeah, and then they also had the axis shifters, which were in the springtime part of the orbit, which would tell you that most likely that object is on that side of the sun. That when we're in springtime is when we're actually in between the sun and whatever dense object is out there.
And do you have a handful of astronomers you're working with?
No. There's so many facets to this. For one, from reading the ancient texts and all that, I never believed that you'd ever be able to see this object until it was right up on us, because of the fact that if it's a brown dwarf star, it doesn't put out any visible light. It only puts out infrared light. So even if the object was as close as the moon, okay, all you're going to see is a big black circle in space. It's just going to be a big black round spot that's going to block out the stars. And so I've never really concentrated so much on trying to find the object as I have concentrated on the preparations going on. That's a big part of the presentation, is the actual preparations that the governments and corporations and elites have been doing over the last 20 years. And and the ancient stuff, their descriptions of the object.
I do want to talk about that. That's a good point, because I know that in the upcoming movie, the title is just 188 days. I saw it's not 188 days later. What's the whole title?
No, just 188 days. 188. Plus, I actually released 2 documentaries at the same time: 188 Days and The Return of the Great Dragon, which is basically part 2 to the Destroyer Star and the Future of Mankind.
And I know that those documentaries are basically on events from space. And you said, what can you tell us about what you see as government action specifically started because of something from space?
Well, it looks like around in the late 70s they launched the Pioneers to go look for the object. And then it seems like right after they discovered the object, there was announcements made in the newspapers and in encyclopedias and things like that. And then all of a sudden, everybody went into hush-hush mode. And then it seems like the catalyst that got the whole thing started was the assassination attempt on Reagan. Right about that time, most people don't even know that Neil Bush, his wife him and his wife were going to have dinner with John Hinckley's brother the day of the shooting of Reagan. But anyway, getting off on a tangent here, it seems like that's when it all went down the tubes, when they deregulated the economy, when the propaganda started, when they started changing FEMA from actual emergency management into what it is today. When all the Muslim propaganda started, it seemed like that right at that time period, right about the Reagan assassination attempt, is when it all started to go chaotic.
And that would be when they deregulated and they basically turned on the money presses, and they gave everyone an opportunity to rape that's the wrong word, to take advantage of the monetary system of the United States.
Yeah, and it's funny because they just announced, I think it was last night, that back when they did they made all those loans. The United States loaned out $7.7 trillion to different banks all around the world with no interest, and then borrowed the money back with interest. I mean, imagine that.
And somehow they still made money, and somehow we still lost, right?
Yeah, the bankers, they all took home all their little, their little bonuses and all that, while we sit here sucking lint balls out of the carpet for nutrition.
Okay, yeah, that really stinks. I try not to think of that. I try to think of more positive things, because listen, everyone, if there's listeners out there, we do spend a lot of time researching some really dramatic events, different opinions on all sides, but let's all remember to enjoy life as much as we can. There are still good things in life, because our short lifespan means nothing in the grand scheme of things, even if something happens during our lifetimes. Don't forget to go out and enjoy life, please, please, please. So listen, you have, what are we looking at, March 21st or so, right? Now, you're not the only person who is now put together these sequence of events. And it's kind of interesting to me, because I'm not sure. I believe that personally, myself, I didn't hear about a 188-day cycle until after the comet, basically. Now, and that may be because I wasn't following you close enough, so this isn't anything on you. Just as my own, what I picked up, is that I really didn't pick up on the 188-day cycle until Comet Lenin's major dates had already gone by, and some of the people who were counting on Comet Lenin to be something else expanded their research and have appear to be a proponent of the 188-day cycle as well, and that all puts us out until March 21st. And like you said, it appears that in the spring cycle, the earthquakes or the earth changes appear to be worse. So I don't mind waiting, because time, time's Mother Nature, time, the universe is going to show us what it wants to show us if it's a natural thing when it wants to. We can't make it come any sooner or any later. I just have I have a bad feeling, because of the events that occurred earlier in the summer of 2011 and how literally frantic, panic, really bad scenarios were a result. And now, the people who are doing the research are not responsible for the responses of the listeners. But I just wish that we could do something more for the listeners than just tell them something was going to happen. Do you feel like sometimes you wish you could do more?
Well, that's why in 188 days, what I've done is I have included in there demonstration on how to make a water filter out of basically things you find lying around for free. How to make a bug-out bag, things you might want to have in an emergency backpack. Things to avoid, different scenarios that could happen and things you might want to avoid. So I've tried to do that, and what I get away from is so much as making predictions. The reason why I put down the 188 days, because it was evident on, I think it was September 8th or 9th, something like that. I had told my friends, my friend and my mom and his mom, that I had noticed that other people were noticing this 188-day pattern, and that on the 15th of September was the next one, and if it happened again on that day, then I was going to probably, get involved in this hypothesis. So, sure enough, we had those, the 7.3 in Fiji and 3 other 6.0s on that day, and at that time I was pretty sure that there's something to it.
Yeah, and I can, because I'll tell the listeners again, I went back and I did, the numbers are there, and so, I was, being who I am, and I won't try to hide who I'm being, I was hoping I would go into the numbers, and if you didn't know me or not, I was hoping they would be all messed up, but they're not. And I'll tell you what, that is because I like to be optimistic, Lucas. Before I say something is wrong, I want to make sure that everything is not okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you'll know, ask anybody on my Facebook page, there's nobody in this world that wants to be more wrong than I do. I wish I was wrong, but you have to add an element of common sense to this. Once all these things start lining up like this, and you start seeing all these people run to the hills, and you start seeing the $2.3 trillion mission, which ended up turning out to be like 4-point-something trillion, and all this stuff going on, you start to see a bigger picture, and you start to ignore all the junk science that's been thrown around out there, the flat Earth kind of science that we've been hit with.
Yeah, the flat Earth always threw me for a loop. I don't know how we go from Samaria to flat Earth to I mean, that this just totally boggles the mind. And if there was any proof that there is an ability to fool the human race and or an ability to keep them from information, the fact that we went back to a flat Earth theory is just totally obnoxious to me, and I don't see how it happened. I really don't see how it happened.
Well,
but
it looks like what happened is they discovered America a lot earlier than what we're being told with Christopher Columbus. And the people that discovered America didn't want the rest of the world to find it. And so they concocted this whole theory of, the Earth is flat and you'll sail off the end of the Earth. And they tried their best, which I also believe, like with the Bermuda Triangle, they create these theories in order to keep people from doing things. Like the Bermuda Triangle has thwarted so many people from flying over that area because they're afraid they're going to die. So it cuts down on the amount of people that may possibly see underwater structures there, where Google Earth has that area blocked out that you can't see underwater.
I'm going to answer a question quickly, Lucas, from the chat room. My friend Prophet Chaser, he asked me what two events were 188 days apart, and since I have them written down here, I'm just gonna run over them. Prophet Chaser, what I did is I went through the numbers from the USGS myself, and it's all public information, and it really just takes a calendar and some of these dates. I went down and I tracked all the earthquakes over 7.0 from 10/23/11 back to 2/18/09, and these are the events listed that would fall within the 188, 187, or 189 days. We start at 9/15/11, a 7.3 earthquake in Fiji. We go back to 3/11, which is the Honshu 9.0. We go back to 9/5 and 9/3/2010, a 7.0 in New Zealand. We go back to March 1st of 2010, an 8.8 in Bio. We go back to 8/25/09, a 6.9 in Banda, and then we go back to 2/18/09, a 7.0 in the Kermadec Islands. I did the numbers, 187, 188, 189, plus or minus a day. You all have 6 earthquakes that were that far apart over 7.0. I will also add that those 6 earthquakes include the largest earthquakes of that period, the 9.0 and the 8.8 in Bio. I cannot even try to say that when someone makes an observation like that it is not accurate, because according to the public information, there's 6 earthquakes right there. I do plan on going back farther. It is not an easy task to do it right off the top of your head, but I did go back to February 18th of 09, and there are 6 of them right there that support it.
Well, and if you want to make your job easier on that, go to Google and type in a date calculator, and it'll allow you to minus or plus 188 days and cut down on your time.
Yeah, because this did take me a long time, And again, the reason why I did it, I was hoping, listeners again, because I was hoping I was going to fall right in there and say, but it's there. So I feel, and it's really a part of the reason why I'm still a part of this and still talking with folks who are following this kind of research. I do have my points that I disagree with, because I feel in physics some of the objects that, the placement of the object and the type of object. See, we have no real attributes. Like someone brought up last week, and whether I want to say Cossack's name or not, a caller last week, Cossack, said we're trying to put attributes on an object that we have not visually seen, and so forth. We really are unable to put what the object is, how far away is it, what's the mass. Most of the research is going on is connecting the dots. Lucas has a history of making timelines of past events in order to get a gauge of his own personal view on the future. Right, Lucas? That's how it's gone for the most part. The best way to teach somebody is give them the history, put it in a timeline, and then somehow that spells it out for people to extrapolate a futuristic event. In this case, we have 6 earthquakes, all large ones, over 7.0, running on or about half orbits of Earth, and the next date apparently is March 21st. For the listeners who thought that our friend Terrell would be the only person who is involved in this research, if you didn't know it yet, he's not the only one doing research on these things, and he's not the only one who's come up with the 188 days. For me personally, I am curious who came up with the first. You know, Lucas, everybody wants to know who came up with what first, because what I dislike out of research is, and I know this isn't you, because I know how much time you spent on your own personal research, and it's not like I'm disrespecting anyone else for doing their own personal research. So I sure would like to know how some of our friends got to the 188 days, if it came off the opinion of someone else like Lucas or vice versa. You came up with this all by yourself, right, Lucas?
Well, when it comes to the 188 days, no. Actually, the first time I heard about it was from I can't remember his name. He's like a Swedish guy who tracks this stuff. I can't remember his name, though. He's got a really heavy Swedish accent, and he makes YouTube videos. But that was the first time I heard about it. I didn't actually discover the 188-day pattern myself. But once I did, I started following it and definitely subscribed to it.
Okay, let me, since and questions come to my head as you're talking, I'm thinking, what do we have? We had 8.8 in bio, then we went to 9. Do you think we're going to get it worse? Do you think the possibility is? Because listen, what do we have? We're also going to, our sun is also very active right now. And I'll tell you that the sun is more active now than it was back in February of 2009. Do you think that it's going to be, what is, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is your head at with the future? I mean, because you made the videos, and I know they're great, but your research must be leading you personally somewhere, and that's what always interests me about everyone who's doing research. It's that individual insight, and is there something that your research is giving you personally that you're thankful you have because nobody else is giving it to you from another source that's trusted?
Well, basically how bad it's going to be, what my research leads me to believe that approximately 11,500 years ago, it was real bad at that time because of the area the Earth was in space when this object passed by. And I'll give you a good for instance. First of all, it's when Plato dated the sinking of Atlantis. Okay, right after that, or right at that time period, we had the extinction of all the big mammals like the woolly mammoth and the woolly rhino, the giant Irish deer, the giant sloth, things like that. So they all disappeared at that time period. Also, the woolly mammoths that were frozen, the ones that died in Siberia, they were frozen. There's a popular misconception that they had grass in their mouth. That's not true. They had undigested grass in their stomach, which would tell you that they weren't like instantly frozen like in 10 seconds like you see on The Day After Tomorrow. Okay, they probably died of exposure, and then over the course of a couple hours they froze solid before the actual food in their stomach had a chance to digest. So what I've come to is that approximately, before 11,500 years ago, there was an advanced civilization on this planet. They knew how to fly. They knew how to make sophisticated machines. And then what happened is the Earth's axis actually tilted 2,000 miles when this object passed by. And not just a couple inches like what we saw in the last few earthquakes. Now what's interesting is the woolly mammoths, approximately 12,000 years ago, North America was about 2,000 miles closer to where the North Pole is today. That's why we had all the glaciers in North America. Siberia was much lower, closer to the equator, 2,000 miles. That's why then when this thing happened, it shifted the global axis. It thrusted Siberia up towards the pole, which thus froze the woolly mammoths, brought North America closer to the equator. Then all of our ice caps melted, and also Antarctica. at the time before the shift, half of Antarctica was most likely ice-free. And so that's probably why the Neumayer Station, I don't know if your listeners or you have seen this, but the logo for the 1999 Neumayer Station down in Antarctica shows the continent of Antarctica with a magnifying glass over it and 3 pyramids underneath the magnifying glass. Like they're looking for pyramids down there in Antarctica. So, it's all perfectly explained by and the biggest thing of all, which I forgot to mention here, was the fact that all the sites, Easter Island, the Great Pyramids, the Nazca lines, all these sites are put in this perfect circle around the world. And literally, if you draw a line between all these ancient sites that all line up with the stars 12,000 years ago, they all form this perfect circle, and right in this perfect circle, in the very center of it, is right where the border of Canada and Alaska meet, right at the Pacific Ocean there, which is about 2,000 miles. So it tells us that they purposely lined these sites up with the stars 12,000 years ago, and they put them in this perfect line, or this perfect circle, to tell us that this is when they built these sites. And they put the perfect circle there to show us where the pole was at that time.
Oh, that's where the pole was, where Alaska and Canadian borders. Now, back to the Antarctica. I believe in the sense that some of the research they're doing down there, because, I believe the map, one of the ancient maps that they show, where the map actually shows the borders of Antarctica without snow on it.
Yeah.
And they found that extremely rare, because how would they know where the borders were of Antarctica? Because as far as we know, there's always been snow on it. And I suppose if that was true back in, that many thousands of years ago, and there was no snow on Antarctica because the pole was different, and maybe Antarctica's climate was different, I would not doubt that there's structures under the ice. And in fact, over this last year, I've heard a lot of people doing research, because they'll, maybe this was the first time I heard about pyramids, but, there was a lot of strange activity reported from Antarctica, and not from Mr. Ursa Adams, Donnie Gilson, but from other respectable sources who say there's research going on in Antarctica that would totally blow our mind, and it's not all about what's out in space, but what's under the ice.
Yeah, and not only that, but so many things are being kept from us. Like, most people don't know that the world's biggest pyramid as of this day is not in South America, and it's not in Egypt. It's in
Bosnia.
And it's 2,300 feet tall, and it has a layer of about 4 to 5 feet of dirt on top of topsoil. And basically, it looks like what happened is at one time, big waves came in there, left a bunch of sediment, and then over the years, trees and grass grew on it, and it just looked like a mountain. But in all reality, it's a pyramid. So, and not only that, but when people say about Antarctica being ice-free, it's only half of Antarctica. Part of Antarctica would still have been in an area that was void of sun. So there would still be big ice caps on part of Antarctica, but about 3/4 of it would have been ice-free. And that would also explain how these people became so technically advanced. For one, they were segregated from the rest of the world. That's why the United States has been able to become so advanced, because we don't have to worry about wars every 3 or 5 years, on our borders. We have the water between us. So that would explain why they became so technically advanced. And plus, if they had giant glaciers there, they would have always had a fresh water supply.
Do you know about Göbekli Tepe?
Oh, yeah. Very familiar with it.
They buried that, didn't they?
Well, they say they did. I don't know whether it's buried or whether it's was flooded over. When you watch this Ancient Aliens show, I like the show a lot. The only problem I have is they attribute all this ancient technology to ancient aliens, which I don't necessarily believe that all the technology came from that. I think that a lot of the technology, it's pretty clear that when this shift happened, 11,500 years ago, some people that survived it still had some pretty formidable weapons, and they went out around the world and they basically took over areas, like, say, Zeus with his thunderbolt, and you had Thor with his hammer, and you had Lu with his magic spear. And so these people, they were so powerful with these weapons that nobody could do anything against them, so they became their gods.
Do you believe then that the gods? I mean, if we're going to go back to Zeus and Cronus, are we talking about fallen angels? Are we talking about aliens? What is your thought?
No, I think they were from the society that existed on Earth before the big pole shift, axis shift, I should say.
I have another question that's curious to me. Potential of us being our own ancient aliens via some time machine.
I've heard that.
Who knows, right?
I never discredit anything until there's so much proof against it that you can't possibly believe it. I've learned, when a normal person watches 9/11 on TV, they say, "Oh, damn Muslims! Look what they did to us." But if you take it at face value, so I've learned from that experience to never, ever, ever say that can't be true, because you never know.
Okay, and that brings up a good point. Now, Lucas, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to try to do just a vocal station break, and then I'm going to say a point, and we're going to continue. Is that okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, everyone, listeners to Revolution Radio, this is your host of Collision Course. My name is Francis. My guest is Lucus911, creator of great documentaries like his most recent one, 188 Days. He has that wonderful 16-part YouTube video from Brave New Books, a great description of his point of view on conspiracy theories, and he correlates those to physical locations on Earth, and he tries to describe in great detail where the world is bringing us and how we may not be realizing what's happening to us. So, if you like this information, remember that freedomslips.com Revolution Radio is totally listener-supported. We all know Nighthawk is a great radio station owner. He tries his best for us. Your hosts do the best they can for you, and all that we really try to do in return is make sure that the radio station is there for us each week so that it's there for you. In the left-hand sidebar, you'll see there's a PayPal donate button. That's the fastest way to send cash.